I'm Brian McCrone with NBC 10 Digital. I'm here with NBC 10's political reporter Lauren Mayk. Today, we're kicking off a new web series on the 2022 midterms here in Pennsylvania. Lauren, let's get right to it. The two biggest races at the top of the ballot here for Pennsylvania voters, the races for governor and U.S. Senate. Why are they so important this year?
They're going to have big implications on people's lives for sure, Brian. They are going to have both local and national implications. When you talk about the Senate race here in Pennsylvania, it is one that is being closely watched across the country. Not only watched, but actually people from around the country are getting involved in it, giving money. I expect to see this to be one of those races where you might get phone calls from outside the state from supporters of one candidate or another encouraging you to vote, because the balance of the Senate is really what's at stake here. Democrats hold the Senate right now by just they don't hold it by any seat at all. Actually, the only reason that they have control is because Vice President Kamala Harris breaks any ties there. So they are looking to pick up seats. Republicans obviously want to defend that seat that is currently held by Pat Toomey. So that Senate race is extremely important nationally. And when it comes to the governor's race, we have a situation in Pennsylvania where we have a state legislature that is currently held by Republicans, controlled by Republicans. And right now we have a Democratic governor, Governor Tom Wolf. And so it is split in Harrisburg. If a Democrat wins that seat, which would be Josh Shapiro, who's the only Democrat running in that race, that would continue. But if a Republican wins that seat, then you could see a lot of policies change in Pennsylvania, things that Republicans had wanted to get through that Tom Wolf has stopped them from doing. So there is a lot at stake in that race as well. So these are two huge races, and they are both open seats. You don't have incumbents running for either one of these. So that's why folks are already seeing it, on their TVs, and they'll be seeing it in their neighborhoods soon if they haven't yet already.
Well, there's already talk about hundreds of millions of dollars potentially being spent here. I mean, I guess the issues really are there's a lot of people who want these seats too, right? I mean, we're going to get to it a little later with your big board. We'll take a look at that in a little bit, but the primary is May 17th, and there were dozens of people that wanted to run early on. It's whittled down a little bit. I mean, what's happening now that's making it's coalescing everything together? Take us through the governor's race and the Senate race, because there's still
Yeah, Brian, we've been keeping a close eye on this in terms of the filings that have come in. Just in this past week, we had the deadline for candidates to file their petitions. And, to run in Pennsylvania, you have to get signatures on petitions. It's a labor-intensive process. If you were at the grocery store, you might have seen people standing there trying to get you to sign something. It was so that they could get on the ballot. And to run for governor or to run for Senate, you got to get 2,000 signatures. So that's what they've been really doing in recent weeks. And that's one reason why we saw fewer people maybe than the initial large list, because not everybody went through that process or got enough signatures or ended up filing their petition, so that we ended up with it was 10 Republicans who filed to run for governor. One has since just in the past 24 hours dropped out. So you've got 9 Republicans now running for governor who want to take on Josh Shapiro, who's the only Democrat running. And then on the Senate side, you've got 7 Republicans running for Senate, and I believe 5 Democrats running for Senate there. So those are still pretty hefty fields. I mean, that's still, I don't know what your experience is in Pennsylvania, Brian, but those are still pretty hefty fields.
yeah. Look at on the Senate side, because the Democrats have figured it out for themselves on the governor's side. But on the Senate side, they're really still Democrats are still trying to figure out: do we want a progressive? Do we want a moderate? That's really the big question, right? And you have Connor Lamb out in Western Pennsylvania, who is picking up a ton of endorsements in Eastern Pennsylvania, where there's a lot of Democratic votes. But you also have John Fetterman, who is also a Western PA guy, but does identify with a lot of the progressives in the Philadelphia area. I mean, take us through a little bit about what's going on there in the internal battle for Democrats in the Senate race.
Yeah, this is really interesting, Brian. And you said it. Like Connor Lamb's been picking up some endorsements in the Philadelphia area, which is very interesting for two reasons. One is that there is a Philadelphia candidate, Malcolm Kenyatta, who has some union endorsements, who is a state representative, and who also has had some national profiles as well. With cable appearances and that sort of thing. But he serves in Harrisburg, and he's from North Philadelphia. So there is a local candidate who has not gotten some of those endorsements, even though he's gotten some other ones. And then also Philadelphia has sort of trended more progressive in recent years in the way that it's voting for Larry Krasner twice, voting to elect a member of the Working Families Party to Philadelphia City Council, for example. And yet we've seen these endorsements go to Connor Lamb, who is considered more of the moderate of the bunch, even though when I talked to him, he said that he does consider himself a progressive. That may be up to voters to decide sort of where they put these folks. But Connor Lamb's endorsement, or the endorsement that he picked up this week from the Philadelphia Democrats, is interesting. I mean, there had been some indication before that John Fetterman would not get that endorsement from some of the things that Bob Brady had said to reporters, the head of the Democratic Party in Philadelphia. But the reason that gives Connor Lamb a boost is because that means that he's essentially on their endorsed slate of candidates that you hand out to people when they're going into vote. And when you've got a race that has so many candidates in general that people are just trying to keep track of, especially that could be helpful.
Just to remind some of the viewers that are joining us on Facebook, I'm Brian McCrone, and I'm with NBC 10 Digital, and I'm here with Lauren Mayk, who is our political reporter at NBC 10, and she's been on the trail. She's already interviewed, I think it's maybe 8 or 9, maybe even 10 or 11 now. I have been. I'm posting them online all the time, and people, and you can find all that at NBC10.com/decision 2022. So Lauren's trying to
I would encourage people, if they haven't seen them, to watch them, because these are digital. You might see some of my longer interviews, and these are really great sort of more bite-sized versions of these interviews, and a really great chance to kind of get to know the candidates, see how they answer questions, see how they sometimes don't answer questions. But they're pretty short, just a couple minutes. So they don't take long to watch. So if you haven't seen them, we're going to be rolling out more of them. But we definitely encourage them.
Yes, and you've interviewed. We've talked a little bit about the Democrats, but you've interviewed a lot of Republicans as well who are running for.
There are a lot of Republicans
for Senate. They haven't figured it out yet. But the primary is going to figure it out. Again, coming up on May 17th, the Republicans in Pennsylvania have two huge choices for governor and for U.S. Senate. In the governor's race, you've interviewed at least, I think, 5 different candidates already that are still in the running. The Republicans want the governor's seat very badly in Pennsylvania because it'll really give them. It's expected to give them a unilateral ability to make laws in Pennsylvania, because they're probably, this could change in 2020 in the November election, but signs are still pointing to them holding on to slight edges in the General Assembly. So if they have the governor's seat, they're going to have the ability to make legislation without much obstacles. And so, the issues of that you see nationally playing out will come to roost in Pennsylvania. Abortion, gun rights, education spending, school choice is a big deal. Charter schools versus public schools. I think a lot of the candidates you've spoken to have talked about that already. And then environmental issues.
Schools are funded and funding
Right.
for them as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Brian. These are big issues nationally and to people locally that could change in Pennsylvania. There's this race will determine a lot.
There's already some questions, it looks like, coming in from our viewers on Facebook, talking about, we've covered a little bit about outside money, third parties, these super PACs. Talk a little bit about the history of super PACs in Pennsylvania, and also how they look like. Again, we talked about hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in governors and U.S. Senate races. What's happening now with this outside money? And then there's two big elephants in the room on the Republican side, Mehmet Oz and Dave McCormick. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah,
You've been covering them.
It's interesting. We've seen sort of some of this PAC money. We've seen this PAC money playing out on the Senate side, but we really haven't seen much of the impact yet on the governor side. And I think we will see it happen. For example, Bill McSwain, the former U.S. attorney from the Philadelphia area, he's from Chester County, and he served as the U.S. attorney in the Trump administration in the Eastern District in the Philly region. He has the backing of a PAC that is planning to put a lot of money into this race, and we're starting to see him roll out commercials, but this is likely just the beginning of that, and seeing that money play out into this race and see the commercials roll out. I will say, I think one of the challenges for as we see more people start to have the money to advertise, I think one of the challenges for voters is really just going to be keeping track of who's running in what race, because you're going to see all these back-to-back commercials, and they might be for different races. They might not even be people who are running against each other. But two people who are running against each other on the Senate side are obviously Mehmet Oz, who folks know as Dr. Oz, and Dave McCormick, a former hedge fund manager. Both of them have a lot of money to spend, and they are spending it. And we are already seeing the back and forth on the ads. Mostly what we had seen were ads that were paid for by Oz's campaign. And then we saw ads, a lot of the attack ads on the McCormick side were actually PAC ads by like Honor PA, who's supporting him. However, I will say what's been interesting just in the past week is that it seems like we are moving into a new phase of this fight between them, and potentially a new phase of the campaign where it is not just the ads attacking each other, but you are actually hearing from the men themselves. You're actually hearing from Oz at a press conference. You're hearing from McCormick at events, or they're tweeting, and they are actually talking to each other or attacking each other and talking about each other, as opposed to just letting the ads do it. So that's interesting, sort of like next phase of the campaign that we're getting into. And I think there's also a next phase of the campaign that we're going to be seeing with some policy stuff now that all those petitions have gotten in, because that was a really heavy lift for those campaigns.
Yeah, so just to again remind viewers, the primary is May 17th. Democrats and Republicans will be voting on who they want to run in all the races statewide. But the two big races we've been talking about so far is the U.S. Senate and the governor's race in Pennsylvania. Both are open seats. So as Lauren alluded to, petitions were filed just a couple days ago, which pretty much locked in the candidates that are able to be on the ballots on May 17th. as Lauren always likes to remind me, can definitely be changes though, because there could still be challenges, right, coming up. But
Yeah,
we are into.
you look into how long they have to do that.
There's a deadline coming up. It's not, and we haven't even heard of any challenges yet. So usually you would hear these challenges pretty rapidly because these petitions are signed. There's a large bar to get to anyway. You have to have a certain amount of signatures, and in some cases, you have to have signatures from every county in the state, and then you have
10 counties. I think.
Yes. So I am sort of surprised we haven't seen any challenges yet, but we haven't. So I'm wondering. They only have I think it's another week or two to challenge, but they haven't yet. So that's interesting. But in any case, we're sort of set in where the people that can be on there, and so the May 17th primary will be when everyone decides that as you said, we're moving into this new phase. It looks like the I won't say attacks, but like you said, we're getting policy driven now here. We may get a couple debates coming up. I mean, you're seeing things like, in Philadelphia, you're hearing a lot about Larry Krasner, even as, the DA. Talk a little bit about some of these Philly-centric, southeastern Pennsylvania-centric policies and things like Bill McSwain are bringing up on the campaign.
Yeah, Brian, some voters might think that Larry Krasner's on the ballot. He is not on the ballot. He just won re-election. He is not running for governor. He is not running for Senate, but especially in the governor's race, people are talking about him. There are several Republicans who have specific proposals of things that they would do to potentially get rid of him or diminish his power. Bill McSwain has said that he wants there to be a statewide referendum that would allow the governor to appoint the district attorney in Philadelphia. Jake Corman, who's the top senator, highest ranking senator in the state Senate, who is also running for governor, he has a campaign to impeach Larry Krasner, which has, by the way, not been filed officially in the House, but he is it is something that he's promoting through his campaign. And Dave White, I think, also wants to appoint a special prosecutor. So the Republicans who are running for governor are talking a lot about crime in Philadelphia and putting blame on Larry Krasner. And he is finding his way into these campaigns, even though he's not running. So.
Yeah. So again, just for viewers who have joined us, we're talking Pennsylvania politics and the midterms. This monumental. It's been. This is Lauren Mayk is our political reporter, obviously at NBC 10, and I'm Brian McCrone. I'm with NBC 10 Digital. We're going to be covering the midterms all year long. It's already pretty crazy. The primaries are May 17th. The general election is in November. The fields are getting settled for that primary race. There's still so many candidates and strong candidates on both sides that are out there running. And I think we're going to get to the U.S. House races too, because there's 7 U.S. House races in our southeastern Pennsylvania region. But I just thought I'd touch a little bit more before we move to the Congress, just to stick with the governor's race in particular. You have Josh Shapiro, who is running unopposed on the Democratic side, so he won't face anyone in the primary. He's lining up all the Democratic money to take on whoever of the is it 9 now, or is it I think there's 9 candidates left. Which we're going to go over too. Lauren will show us that again coming up. But of the 9 candidates on the Republican side, and just to remind, the reason why this is such an important race for both political parties and for all Pennsylvania voters is because so many of the issues that you hear about nationally are going to come to play in Pennsylvania, depending on whether a Republican wins it or a Democrat wins it. These issues are the abortion that's playing out in the U.S. Supreme Court with states that are not Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania could become a part of this national debate on abortion. You have gun rights. You also have environmental rights, and whether Pennsylvania joins a collective of states to further support clean energy. But then you also have this, which a lot of the candidates have talked to you about. Lauren has talked one-on-one, and you can find them at NBC10.com/decision2022. Lauren has talked with a handful of the governor's candidates one-on-one already, and they keep bringing up school choice. I mean, can you tell us a little bit, Lauren, about what they're talking about when they talk about school choice in Pennsylvania?
Well, that's a good question, Brian. Actually, in terms of exactly what they are talking about. And this goes to what you and I were just discussing, that we are sort of entering that policy phase where we're going to hear proposals from folks. I reached out to a campaign recently, just in the past week, and said, hey, do you have anything more on, specifically what you are proposing with school choice? And they told me it was coming. So I don't have it yet. But we can expect to see more of that rolled out. And it's a good question. What do they exactly mean? And I'm actually working on a story more specifically about this right now, because, places like Philadelphia, there are options for parents when it comes to, things like charter schools. So what they mean does make a difference, both in terms of funding, in terms of what those options are. And how that affects things. But education is something that you are going to hear a lot about in the governor's race in Pennsylvania. And it has been obviously it's always an important issue, but I would say we also have seen it become more of an issue that is getting parents really involved over the past year or so during the pandemic, with issues about whether schools were virtual or in person, whether kids had to wear masks at school. So education sort of has also been more in the political discussion. And we really saw that play out in the Virginia governor's race. And so, don't forget about the way things played out there. Certainly all these candidates, Democrat and Republican, know how things played out there, and what issues really resonated with voters. Now we're in a different time of the pandemic than we were then, but you see some of the same things being discussed.
So we've talked at length about the U.S. Senate race and the governor's race. Those are the two top of the ballot races. I think we're going to be talking about them all year long. And just to let viewers know, I'm going to have Lauren on to talk about these races weekly if I can get her. She's always out on the trail, so we'll try. So we'll get her as often as we can, and keep doing this. But I think I want to do. You've been doing a very fun thing where you've been counting down the candidates on a big board there, right in the newsroom, and I want to take a look at that. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a little look at a teaser video that we've done that sort of shows what you have been doing over the last few weeks.
So let's update this list. Now, petitions can be challenged, so we'll keep an eye out for any changes. But for now, these are the candidates. Well, it's a lot smaller now, but it is still a lot of candidates to keep track of. You can learn more about them on NBC10.com. We've been posting interviews with candidates and will continue to do so as the races head toward the May 17th primary.
Well, that's Lauren Mayk, and now look, she's live at the big board. Lauren and I, we love interactive stuff We love the interactive stuff on the web, and now this is as interactive as it gets in real life. Lauren, take us through what we're looking at.
In this building, but we decided to go old school with this. And honestly, I need a way to keep track of the candidates. Sometimes I just come over to this board and just look at the list because it is difficult to keep track of who is running for what and which candidates are.
It sounds like the audio is a little dusty up there in the newsroom. Lauren is standing in front. She, as we just saw on that teaser video, that's what she's been doing for us. She's been counting down the candidates. We started out back in December of last year when this really started ramping up. These two huge races, the U.S. Senate race and the governor's race, both in Pennsylvania. Both are open. This is the first time in over 40 years that you've had an open U.S. Senate race and you have an open governor's race. What that means is that the governor's race has a two-term incumbent who cannot serve a third term, Tom Wolf. So he is not able to serve a third term. So he's out. So now we have Democrats and Republicans both with the chance to fill that seat. In the U.S. Senate seat, you have retiring U.S. Senator Pat Toomey, who has served 2 terms in the U.S. Senate. He's retiring. He's not going for a third term. So now you have Republicans and Democrats also vying for that seat. Again, this hasn't happened in over 40 years. I think it's 1978 was the last time in Pennsylvania that you had these two open seats at the same time. And so it's rare, and it's just there's a ton of money coming in to play here, and it looks like Lauren's back up at the board. So there she is. She's been updating this thing throughout the over the last couple months, frankly, and we're way down now on the amount of candidates we had. You should have saw this board before. This is the board now with she has the Republicans who are running. These are all the Republicans that are running for governor. So you can see we just took someone off. There used to be a name, Jason Ritchie, there. He's no longer there. She took him off this morning. So there are the remaining ones. You see Josh Shapiro is all by himself. He's the only one who doesn't have to worry. Of course, he has to worry. He's got to line up all the Democratic money behind him because all these guys on the right and women, Melissa Hart is running. They are going to be lining up as much money as they can. There's supposed to be hundreds of millions of dollars coming in into this race. So there's that race, and then on the other side of the board, you have the Senate race, which Lauren has been updating as well. You should have saw the names on this list. Lauren furiously was erasing names over the last couple weeks. You have 5 candidates on the Democratic side. And you have, I think it's 7 or 8 on the Republican side. You can see we've gone over these lists now earlier today, except we haven't named some of these people who are going to be trying to find their way in this. So this is the board. We'll be updating this throughout the year. We're probably it's gonna get lowered to 1-1 come May 17th, and Lauren's back. We had some audio troubles, but that's how close she's running around. Not only is she furiously erasing names on that big board, but she's also running around the newsroom.
Yeah, that eraser. You're right, Brian. That eraser will get used a lot more later. Yeah, sorry about those audio issues, but the board is a good visual way for us to keep track and for viewers to keep track. And like I said, even just who's running in which race, but we're going to do everything that we can possibly do over the coming months to let you know who these candidates are, what they want to do if they get into office, and ask as many questions as we can so that you can make decisions about who to vote for.
Yeah, I know you have to go again. You're running out to the campaign trail in a little bit, but we didn't even have on that big board, and I think again as we've been telling viewers, Lauren Mayk, our political reporter here at NBC 10, and I will be having some some weekly sessions to talk this over. We'll be talking about the U.S. House races too, but could we just go over quickly what's happening with the U.S. House races in Pennsylvania too?
Yeah, we've got a small board for that, a mini wall, if you will, that we'll be letting everyone see. But yeah, the incumbents in our area are all running for re-election. Some of them have a bunch of primary challengers. Brian Fitzpatrick has a bunch of primary challengers. Dwight Evans from Philadelphia has a bunch of primary challengers. And then there are other situations where there's no primary challenge, but there are multiple people running to take on that incumbent in the general election. So, that we'll be watching those House races as well, because, not only obviously does that impact who represents you in Washington, but that could have an impact on who controls the House. These the House races in Pennsylvania helped Democrats get over the finish line and take control of the House in 2018. Their margin is not very large, and it has dwindled. And they will be fighting to keep control of the House. Republicans are going to be trying to take that control back, and some of these races will be ones to watch for that. Oh, I think we may have just lost Brian. All right. Well, I will be back talking with Brian many times over the coming months as this election plays out. But as you can see, we are using all of our tools, old school and new school and technology. There's Brian. He's back to keep you informed for the 2022 elections.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Lauren. That's your update for this week, voters. We will see you again next week. We'll get more info from the campaign trail from Lauren then. And stay tuned to NBC 10 and NBC10.com for all the latest on the 2022 midterms in Pennsylvania all year long. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining.